Good morning, Unity of Lawrence. I'm Reverend Jen Hutchins, your guest today. I'm founder of Unity Arts Ministry, through which it is my honor to share my passion for creative tools to help you deepen your spiritual practice. As our Sunday morning begins, let us open in a moment of prayer. Allowing yourself to simply become present where you are, and breathing in gratitude for this moment. Let us affirm together. Divine love brings us together in community. Divine love unites us in harmony with all of humanity, with those across the globe. We express our gratitude for the love, for the peace, and for the presence of Spirit. And so it is. Amen. This past week, I had the opportunity to gather with several of the artists from the Unity Arts community, and we got together at a local sunflower field. Now, for those of you who have been at Unity of Lawrence for a while, you know that I love sunflowers, and you know this because a couple years ago, I had my artwork on display there, and many of the pieces were of sunflowers. It is just something, there's something about sunflowers that just bring such joy. And seeing a field of them spread out, it's like all these happy little sunflower faces just shining joy and light back at you. Now, my piece is still in progress, but this is what I started doing while I was out there. And this was the first time that our arts community has been together in person since early March. And I know many of you have still been separated from your spiritual community as doors are still closed. And our studio doors are still closed right now as well. But I couldn't pass up this opportunity when I saw this field to just call people up and be like, I'm going to go paint sunflowers, and if anybody wants to come, here's where I'll be. And so we had about 6 people show up. And what was just so truly heartwarming to me was the joy on everyone's face at being able to see each other again. It was the true connection and the power of community that was really expressed, even through the distant, kind of hugs from across the parking lot. And everybody, of course, set up their easels, lots of distance between each other as we sat and painted in this shared experience together. And today we're going to be talking about community and talking about how we can strengthen our community relationships even during this time of social distancing, whether it's getting together outdoors for a community event like painting sunflowers, or it's simply tuning into your own heart and radiating that divine love. Even when we're not in physical contact with each other, we can still deepen those relationships because we all have that same foundation of Spirit as our source. Now, of course, when you're looking out at a sunflower field, everything is harmonious. All you see in front of you is sunflowers, pretty much as far as the eye can see, up until where we were anyways, there were woods in the background, so you could see the trees off in the distance. But most of us, our communities, even in person, don't look so uniform. For most of us, our communities are more like wildflower gardens. They are filled with lots of variance and lots of color, some things that are maybe pokey and rub up against us sometimes, some colors that just light us up and make us feel inspired and joyful. There are those bits in wildflower gardens that many people would consider weeds. So what I want to share with you today is how we can tend our communities as though they were wildflower gardens. So I hope you're ready for the wildflower journey. For those of you that love gardening as much as I do, I hope it's a good fit for you today. So first of all, why? Why community? Why the focus on community? For so many of us, this distancing, right, the idea of social distancing has brought to mind how important community is in our lives. Sometimes it's in the absence of something that we recognize how much it really means to us. In community, we find solidarity. We find people that we can bounce ideas off of, the good, the bad, the joys, the sorrows. In community, there's a sense of not being alone. In community, we can lift each other up, and we can celebrate each other's joys. Think on all the communities that are part of your life, your family, your friends, perhaps coworkers, your spiritual community. Maybe you have a community somewhere where you typically go out of the house, at a gym or a club or an art studio. Think of the people in those communities and your relationships with them. If each of these communities were a wildflower garden, what would it look like in your mind's eye, using that power of imagination? And simply take a moment to acknowledge the fact that community relationships and interactions have been different this past summer and spring. Simply notice it. Now, in the best of times, communities can still be challenging. As I said, some of those wildflowers might be a little thorny or weedy in your mind's eye. And during this time, when we are all experiencing heightened energies and emotions, when we do get together with our communities, whether it's online or on the phone, things can be even more challenging. If you've been experiencing that, shoot me a little note in the comments so I know it's not just me. A lot of times what's happening is our heightened emotions are interacting then with community. And during this time where there's upset happening, it can feel harder to see eye to eye, especially when we're not right in person with each other. We can't have this back and forth conversation like we normally would do. So maintaining a strong community foundation might feel more challenging, but I'm going to give you the secret to keeping those connections strong, even during times of unrest or challenge in community and in your life in general. And I think one of the big keys is to honor diversity. Honor the fact that a wildflower garden is filled with beauty. Each plant has its own beauty. And I want to share with you a poem on this. This is called Flower Communion, and it's written by Lynn Ungar. What a gathering, the purple tongues of iris looking out at spikes of lupine, the orange crepe skirts of poppies lifting buttercup and daisy. Who can be grim in the face of such abundance? There is nothing to compare, no need for beauty to compete. The voluptuous rhododendron and the plain grass are equally filled with themselves, equally declare the miracles of color and form. This is what community looks like. This vibrant jostle stem by stem, declaring the marvelous joining. This is the face of communion, the incarnation once more gracefully resurrected from winter. Hold these things together in your sight. Purple, crimson, magenta, blue. You will be feasting on this long after the flowers are gone. Isn't that a beautiful description of community? And a beautiful picture that it creates of this wildflower garden. As we honor diversity, we honor the fact that the grass and the poppies are equally as beautiful and equally have as many gifts to bring to our life, to our community. Then we can look at tending this garden, this community garden, with spiritual awareness. That awareness that divine love is our source, no matter what our physical expression. We all have our roots in that same source. And we could go and we could tend each individual flower, but that's not truly nourishing that relationship. It's not nourishing the source and the connection of that relationship to just look at the flowers or point out the flaws in a single petal. When we step back and we look at the ground in which we are all rooted and we water the roots, that's where true spiritual awareness and that true connection is happening. It's a beautiful image, and I didn't come up with it on my own. The idea came from the book Adventures on the Quest, the companion book to The Quest, by Richard and Mary Alice Jafolla. In it, they write, "A relationship on a Christ-to-Christ basis is like watering the roots of the wildflowers." Like watering the roots of the wildflowers. When I think of the narratives of Jesus, one of the words that comes to my mind so often is the phrase divine love, where he really expressed divine love in his relationships, in his connections with others, in the miracle workings, and the healings. Everything was founded in divine love because it wasn't about a personality. It was about that love, that God source behind all of these things. And on the night of the Passover feast, when he knew that he was going to be leaving the physical world, he told his disciples that he had for them a new command. "A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so must you love one another. And by this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another." In the book of John, chapter 13, verse 34. So our command as a spiritual community, one who sees the teachings of Jesus as a way shower, our command is to love one another, to find ways to express and demonstrate that love in the world, and to find ways to connect and strengthen our relationships by watering the roots of our wildflower garden, tending our spiritual community. So how do we do this? I propose 3 steps to tending your wildflower community garden. The first is to simply observe the garden. Rather than judge or label, simply observe. Observe your community, whether it's your spiritual community, your family community, your work community. Simply observe. Notice all of the individuals. Notice them as though there are different flowers, different aspects of this environment, this community environment. Notice the fruits and the leaves. Mindfully notice your communities with a sense of awe. And second is to connect with the roots. We do this through prayer and meditation. First, we connect to our own roots, meditating into the stillness that we know that the source of our being, our ground, is in divine love. And then we meditate upon our roots reaching out and maybe touching the roots of all those wildflowers, all those individuals in our communities near us, and knowing that they too are sourced in divine love. Once we've connected with those roots, then the third step is to water the roots. We create harmony in a shared experience of the sacred. We bring awareness of individuals and communities into our minds and into our heart, and radiate divine love out in a moment of connection, and act from that love in your connections with others. You don't have to know right away what it is that you need to do to resolve a connection that maybe is experiencing some disharmony. But when you take the time to radiate divine love to that relationship, know that source is working and divine love is working in that. I know there was a time in my life where my mother and I did not see eye to eye, and it was not because of a pandemic. It was simply at that time in my life. I was in my early 20s, and we clashed. Every time we talked on the phone, there was this dissonance, and I couldn't wait to get off the phone. And something shifted in our relationship, and looking back, what I realized now had shifted was me. I started attending a spiritual community. I started doing my own work. I started connecting to my roots. I started noticing divine love active in me and in others. And without even having to sit down and specifically send love, send light to her directly, it shifted because I was in a different place. I was being received in a different place. And one day we had this conversation that seemed to me to simply be magical. All those things that normally would push my buttons, they just weren't there. We had this amazing conversation. I remember getting off the phone and going to my husband being like, I don't know what happened, but it was a great conversation. And that was the turning point. After that, our relationship just grew and grew and strengthened. And I know in my heart that it was because of the spiritual work I was doing. That divine love then was present, visible, tangible in all aspects of my life. And I know that this is true and possible for you and your relationships as well. Water the roots. Tending our communities with spiritual awareness can deepen and strengthen all of our connections, even in this time where we feel in moments isolated or alone, or that we aren't with our spiritual community right now, that we aren't with members of our family right now. Tending the roots with spiritual awareness can strengthen those relationships, bringing harmony, bringing peace, and a deeper sense of connection. Give it a try. See what happens as you observe your garden. Connect with the roots and water the roots. I would love to close with an affirmation. Divine love strengthens my relationships. Where you are, I invite you to say that with me. Divine love strengthens my relationships, and so it is. And as we breathe that in, we're going to take that into our moment of meditation today. So wherever you are, I invite you to become comfortable in your body. Simply let your body relax. Maybe roll your shoulders or your neck. Feel your feet on the ground if you're sitting up. Take in a breath. Exhale. And knowing that our body is secure, our body is centered, I invite you to close your outer eyes as we bring our awareness to the inner realm. Closing the eyes and continuing to breathe, letting the breath be a vehicle that presences us in the right here and right now. Allow your body to relax. Allow your mind to release any thoughts that it's holding on to, activities from earlier this morning, plans for later today. Simply let them drop by your side for a moment. And then bring your awareness to your heart center. Maybe place your hands on your heart. And breathe into your heart space. With each breath, imagine it feeling lighter, feeling brighter, with the energy and the light of divine love. Breathing in, breathing out, resting in divine love right here, right now. We take this energy into a moment of silence. On the next inhale, begin to bring your mental awareness back to this time and place. And affirm with me, divine love strengthens my relationships. Divine love strengthens my relationships. And so it is. We breathe back into this moment. We flutter our eyes open, bringing this awareness of divine love with us and radiating it out into all of our connections, all of our relationships throughout the day and throughout the week. Have a blessed week, and I will hope to see you all again very soon.